What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Colton Posey Fishing. And today I'm giving y'all what y'all wanted. I'm going to tell y'all the patterns that I was on and the patterns that I was using up here on Lewis Smith Lake. Stay tuned. Alright, so the number one thing, you've got 3 or 4 different things going on right now. So the spawn's really fixing to start picking up as far as on Lewis Smith. So there's really 3 different kinds of bass that you can chase. Or well, I say 3, 4. You've got the largemouth. Typically, they already live in the creeks. So you're gonna get back here. I'm gonna show you a little video. So you're typically gonna get back here, and like this is like a secondary point leading into a creek. This is another secondary point leading into a creek. So typically these largemouth and some of these spots will set up on these secondary points. It's basically the residential fish. So what I mean by residential fish, it is fish that are born in the creek, they live in the creek, they spawn in the creek, they die in the creek. They never go out towards the main lake. These fish, like I said, the spots and the largemouth, you'll find kind of a mixture on these secondary points. Most of your spots is going to be further towards the main lake, and most of your largemouth is going to be further towards the back of the creeks. Now, the baits that I use to target these, one thing that I was wanting to do is some of this buckbrush and stuff that's flooded basically in these creeks. I know a lot of people will be throwing jigs and stuff at them. So what I'm using as far as when I get up in the creeks around this buckbrush and the secondary points, they're hard to catch, I'm using just a regular drop shot. So this is one of the KVD Dream Shots, or whatever you call them. It's made by Strike King. It's a really good technique to use, especially when the fish kind of come lethargic and they're kind of seeing everything right now. So that's one way to catch them. Another one that I'm using is a underspin. So basically I've just got a little Yum breaking shad white fluke, I guess you'd call it, on there, and I'm basically just throwing these for those fish that are suspended off these secondary points. Another thing that I'm using, I've got a Rapala DT14. That way if they're pushed off of these longer secondary points, I'm using it. I'm sticking to the shad colors right now just because it's a cloudy day, but if it's really bright outside, I'll swap to the crawl colors. And as you know, on Lewis Smith, you always want to have a jerk bait and a top water bait tied on, just in case. You never know when they're going to start bulling. So those are the patterns that I'm using when I go up into the creeks. This is in the mouths of the creeks, in the middle of the creeks, okay? This doesn't pertain to what's going on in the back of the creek at all. So to transfer over to that, we're talking about the backs of the creeks. The backs of the creeks, you can see all the ripple on the water from the wind. The backs of the creeks, they'll be at the very back, and they'll be dead calm like it is over there on the other side. So I'm using to target these fish most of the time over a Rapala shad wrap. Now, if the shad wrap, what I mean by using it, the only time that I'm using it is when I get in the back of a creek that has a run-in it at this time of year. I'm not rushing all the way to the backs of these creeks right now. They're not spawning yet. So there is some that's making beds, especially the spots that live in the creeks. All right, transferring over to a different type pattern. So we've already talked about the largemouth and the spots that live in the creek. They're residential fish. They never move out of the creek. Now we're going to talk about the spots that live on the main lake. So you got 2 kinds of spotted bass that live on this lake, on the main lake. The species, I mean, it's Alabama spotted bass. I don't mean there's 2 different species, but you've got the fish that chase the blueback herring, and you've got the spotted bass that chase the threadfin. So the spotted bass that chase the threadfin are transitioning into the creeks. So they've been on the main lake all winter. Part of the spring, early spring, they've been on the main lake. So they're following those thread fins back here to the backs of these creeks. So you're going to find these fish typically, you know, in the middle of a creek section leading leading into the back of a creek. So you're not going to find them way all the way in the back or way far out on the main lake. What I typically use to target those fish, I'm just using something like that little shad wrap or underspin, swim baits, stuff like that. Just keep it real simple. You want to imitate the size of the bait fish. So that's one of the things up here at Smith that you got to be real key on. When you're fishing, make sure you're watching to see what kind of shad or what size shad are swimming by your bait, your lures, or following it up to the boat, stuff like that. If you catch a fish, be looking down in his throat to see if there's any kind of bait in there so you can mimic the size. The colors really don't matter as far as it's white and looks natural, or a green pumpkin with a pearl belly, something like that. You know, you just want to keep it the size to whatever size they're eating. You'll definitely catch more fish. So now the last pattern that I want to talk about, these are the spotted bass that chase the blueback herring. These are the bass that is going to weigh the most. They're going to be the biggest spots that you can find on Smith Lake. Always are. They're basically eating filet mignon year round. So they're going to be on the main lake, period. This is my opinion. Some people might agree with me. I don't really care. I know from experience, the spotted bass that feed on blueback herring will stay on the main lake year round. They spawn on the main lake. The only thing they might do, they might move off of a point back up into a little cove, drop their eggs, and they head straight back out. They never sit on their bed. They never lock onto their beds. That's all they focus on, is eating them herring. So what I use to target those fish is the same thing. Basically that underspin. I'm using the top water walking bait. I'm using just a regular swim bait, some crankbaits. You don't have to get crazy with it. Like I said, just mimic the size. Look on your fish finder. If you see a big school of bait fish, one way to tell the size, pull off of where you saw those bait fish, mark it, take something, throw it over there to the depth they were in and bring it back to the boat. 9 times out of 10, they're going to follow your bait back to your boat. So just pay attention when they come up, or you can catch a bass and, you know, if they have it in their mouth, then you can see what size or what kind of species they're eating and stuff like that. So guys, that's how I patterned Smith Lake for the tournament. Now I'm going to talk to you about where I was fishing. So this is a big one. Basically, I had like 4 patterns going on. The first one, I was just hitting docks going into the mouth of these coves. So basically, I was just taking a fluke. Hold on, I'll show you. Just skipping it up under docks and stuff like that, and just working it out. And you know, they were tearing it up. It was typically the docks that was that stuck out further in the creek channels. So, you know, look for those docks that are sticking out a little bit further or have something different on them than the other docks in the area. A lot of times something different can catch you a lot more fish. It's just that simple. The second pattern that I had going on, now this was after we had all them really bad rains. So there were tons of run-ins, and I mean tons of run-ins. I mean, you couldn't drive 5 miles without seeing a run-in. So basically what I was doing, I was bouncing from run-in to run-in to run-in to run-in. I would make about 10 casts on each one. If it didn't get bit, I would move on. Basically what I was throwing on that, I was throwing a swim bait and I was throwing a drop shot. So the swim bait, I'm throwing it out there, I'm letting it hit bottom, I'm just slow reeling it back. Most of the time they're going to hit it, sometimes they won't. So the other one was the drop shot. I'm throwing that thing up in the run-in. I mean exactly where the water is hitting the other water, okay? And I'm just working that thing out. Like I said, about 5 to 10 casts. You don't get bit, get up and move on. Typically, the run-ins that I found were more productive was the ones that had the water temperature was like, on the main lake, it was like 59 degrees, and the run-in was like, 64, 65. It was a big difference. So typically the run-ins in the pockets that are warmer and there's clean water. If it's dirty water, just get on out of there. You're wasting your time. Where there was clean water coming in and warm water made a huge difference. I could sit there, catch 10, 12, 13, 14 fish, and then get up, move on to the next one, keep doing that over and over and over again. Now, the third pattern I want to talk about is channel swings. About channel swings, if you look at this creek, see how the creek winds back up over there? And then if you imagine it, imagine this as a creek. The current's coming around, hitting this bank, and then going all the way around, and then hitting that opposite bank right there. So this right here is a secondary point. They can set up on this, but a lot of times this time of year, 90% of the people is going to hit this right here. They're going to hit everywhere on it, across it, the side, down below, whatever. A lot of times when those fish get pressured, they'll move to the outside of these channel swings, and they'll just set right up against that break or ledge. And you can just go down through here, get your boat parallel with the bank, and just smoke them on a crankbait. Well, the final pattern that I had, it's real simple. It was the spotted bass that were chasing herring. So basically all I was doing, I was getting on those long narrow points. I was casting a swim bait out there, 3/8 ounce head, 3.75 rage swimmer, white when it's cloudy, natural when it's bright and sunny. Same way when it's muddy. So if it's muddy, I'm throwing the white. It doesn't matter if it's sunny or not sunny. So I would cast that out there as far as I possibly could, let that thing hit bottom, and then I would slow roll it, let it tick the rocks and stuff like that. They would just load up on it. So guys, that's my patterns. That's the places that are the areas that I was fishing on Smith Lake, hoping to, do very well in the ABT tournament. It's canceled, obviously, because of the coronavirus. But, hope all y'all stay safe out there. I appreciate you watching. Give me a thumbs up and a subscribe if you think the information that I'm giving y'all is valuable. Get out there on the water and test this stuff out. If for some reason, you got any questions about anything that I'm going over or anything like that, feel free to drop a comment or send me a message or whatever. I'll help you out the best way that I can. But guys, I appreciate you. We'll see you next Sunday.